Okay, sorry about that. Little pro tip: if you want to start a podcast, you're into the podcast game. Don't click go live before you've connected your microphone, particularly when you've actually lost the attachment for putting your microphone into your laptop. But I think it's fixed now. Let me know if you can hear me. I hope you're all doing well. Monjombo, good to see you. I don't know. I always say Monjombo. Mojombo. For my mouth, that is difficult for some reason. Apologies. Carrot cake, though, and coffee sounds excellent for my mouth. And hopefully for yours. I actually made a carrot cake in December, and it turned out quite well. I'm not a big baker, but I was impressed. The person I was making it for was impressed, which is the most important thing there. Majombo, is that with your DeLonghi? DeLonghi update from me. Making espresso is yeah. It's always I never know what point to cut it off at. Like it's a dub. I'm using the double espresso attachment because let's be honest, wanting to have a single espresso, like that's so unnecessary. Although you could like micro dose it, couldn't you? Maybe that's just what people do. Anyway, yeah. When I do my double espresso, it's always way too watery. Like I don't know when to shut it off, and then I shut it off too early, and I'm like, well, have I just wasted loads of coffee there? People say it's like 20-ish seconds. I don't know. And then it seems like the left nozzle on the, because it's a two nozzle thing, seems like the left nozzle is too, it's not as steady a stream as the right nozzle. So I don't know what's gone on there. Should I just get my own, whatever that thing you attach it to is called? I don't know. I'm very inexperienced, and I feel like the espresso I'm making could be better. Now, Jordan, when you said, can Matty start on time? That's passive aggressive, but also, did you mean on time as though 6? Or not 6, 5? I'm converting. Or did you mean on time as though 5:30? Because obviously the time of the podcast did change slightly, so I appreciate those of you for staying up to date with that. But yeah. I'm very nervous today because my soccer team, Newcastle United, plays their hated rivals, Sunderland, in the FA Cup today, much later today. It's 1:36 a.m. here. And generally, in my lifetime of remembering Newcastle games, Newcastle have managed to lose those matchups. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out. Christopher, good to see you. Jack, good to see you. Jack, what part of me saying that I got it fixed? What part of me talking about my espresso made you think I'd got my coffee maker fixed? I don't think I got it fixed. I think I just am an idiot. You know, it's a user error. Idiot behind coffee machine. Well, Jordan, that's very kind. I'm sorry about the original time. Shiv, you want the full all 22 on a coffee machine? I'm just describing what's going on here. We could do a video. The preamble could be me doing my coffee. Right. Okay, well, that's my attempt at preamble on my lonesome. Thank you everyone for attending. Please do like the video, retweet it, let everyone know that I'm live. What I should do is post and let everyone know that I'm live, like an absolute social media self-promotion genius, right? I hope you're all doing well. Christopher, I see the hit it. I will hit it in a second. Let me just shamelessly promote my thing. So here's a question. Do you guys like, while I'm doing this, do you guys like the schedule that we're on of like previews on Friday? And this is a silly question because it's the last week of the season potentially, but previews on Friday, then film Tuesday, Wednesday. Like, what is a good schedule for you I know that we kind of get the usual names tuning in live, which I really appreciate. But is there a better period for you or whatnot? I'm not so like. Just let me know. I would be curious. Can you hear my keyboard as well? That's another thing I've always wondered. Probably slightly. Um, but that was your chance for feedback, and honestly, chat, you kind of there wasn't much feedback. Thank you, Jack, for saying you don't care. I appreciate that. Majumbo, that's good. Yeah, and I'm glad you like the schedule. Thank you very much. Right. Yeah, that copyright thing was unfortunate. I'm hoping it's just a one-off. I mean, to be honest, we make a tiny bit of money from monetizing those videos, but truly, people paying the Stripe link and then YouTube donations. That's where we make our or super chats. That's where we make our most money. Um, so I don't even know if it matters that much, but hopefully they don't keep doing it or do it to like one of the tape breakdowns where it's like a designed video, not a live stream. Anyway, let's hit it as Christopher said. Do I have a banner? I should make a banner for myself, shouldn't I? What? Look at this chat. Look at this overlay. Hold on. This is going to be amazing. If I can work out how to do it. Look at this. Bang. But then it ruins my ads. Maybe we should, I could have it scrolling, couldn't I? Oh, yeah. Look at that. Unbelievable. Oh, Jordan, that's so kind. Let me get to that in a second. I just need to add the, this. Bing. Wow. That's quite the question as well, Jordan. Thanks for all your content, but I'm rarely able to make streams. Question I've had for a while is how much is their lack of use of the middle of the field in the passing game a factor in their difficulty running? Jordan, I don't really think there's much correlation there at all. And they've been able to run the ball okay recently. I mean, this past week, they're fairly efficient doing it right. And they seem to have some movement against what was a pretty talented Steelers front. The real issue with the run game, as Pete Carroll himself has said, is the lack of kind of attempts doing it. And you can do things like run the ball a tad more often, but then you might stray into the inefficient territory. But the real issue for the offense on the year has been third downs, and that being if you can't convert on third down, then you can't stay on the field, and then you're unable to run the football more often. Now, why can't you stay on the field on third down? Part of that has been third down teams know you're passing, and the offensive line has struggled in those situations. The offensive line struggled in general, but third down kind of extra exposes pass protection issues, pass protection problems, because teams know that you're likely to pass, and they kind of play you slightly differently. Things all get a bit tighter. The margin for error gets tighter, and that kind of links to the lack of the usage of the middle of the field in the passing game, in my opinion, because how a lot of NFL teams access the middle of the field in the passing game is the route takes a bit of a longer time to develop, because on very basic terms, right, for a route from the outside to get to the middle of the field, that takes longer than throwing a route where the receiver starts, where he's outside, near the numbers. He has to travel to get across the middle of the field in very, very basic terms, but also taking that a bit more advanced. If you're thinking about some of the passing concepts, the combinations, the way that these kind of intermediate zone windows open up to be able to hit that kind of over the middle of the field area in the passing game, that does take time. Now, the other thing I would say on this, Jordan, is if you look at Geno Smith's heat map, he does target certain areas of the middle of the field quite a lot, like quite significantly compared to league average. It's just overall, the middle of the field doesn't get targeted as often. And again, I think to me, that speaks to pass pro. There's a lot of other things which go into it. And Jordan, at SeahawksOnTape.com, my Substack, where I post kind of real schematic deep dives, I'm going to be looking at the offense, more kind of a defense of, well, not a defense, but let's be honest about Geno Smith and what Geno Smith is and the kind of circumstances he's been having to play in 2023. And what can we actually learn from that? What can the Seahawks learn from that moving forward in 2024? Because, I mean, it's an issue with the defense too. But like, you know, we have to kind of get to the truth of the problem before we start, you know, saying do this, do that. Not that we have the power to do this or that, but that's what the Seahawks will be trying to do. You know, there's a lot of kind of theories and preconceived notions, I'd say. But, you know, there's a lot of data, a lot of tape, a lot of analytics and stuff that I'll be looking at. But yeah, thank you so much, Jordan, for the donation. If you want to donate, super chat, I'll read your chat. I try to read the chat anyway, but if you want to guarantee it, the super chat function is a way of doing that. Jordan, I hope that partially answered your question. I realize over like an audio format where I haven't got the tape prepared, haven't got the film prepared. It's not the best, but what I would suggest also is, I mean, if you look at the tape breakdowns that Griff and I have done, and I did solo for a bit as well, you'll see watching the Seahawks offensive film that, you know, there's a kind of a reason why the over the middle stuff isn't hitting for whatever reason, or the reason why they're not calling those types of routes. And it's not, you know, it is the offensive line, but it's also don't put the offensive line in bad situations. Don't put them in these big passing downs where they're exposed because, you know, you've called a play that didn't work, or you know, a receiver dropped the wide open pass which was there, or, you know, tight end false started. Which puts you in a, you know, clear passing down situation. I don't want to. It's so easy. It's like the two easiest things when an offense is struggling: blame the offensive coordinator, blame the offensive line. So yeah, I don't want to pile on too much on the O-line, but it is an issue, I think, and it has been this season, particularly that kind of pass pro stuff. Right, let's. I did get told to hit it by Christopher, so let's do that now. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where the Seattle Seahawks in Week 18 travel to the Arizona Cardinals. And it couldn't be clearer. The Seahawks have to win this game. And not only do they have to win this game if they want to have a hope of making the playoffs for the second year running, they need the Green Bay Packers to lose at home to the Chicago Bears. Remember last year, Seattle was in a very, very similar position. And the Packers did lose at home to the Detroit Lions, which is slightly different, but Justin Fields is looking better for Chicago, so maybe they get lucky. But Pete Carroll said that the Seahawks won't be scoreboard watching. And ultimately for Seattle, this game, whether, you know, they end up making the playoffs or not, is very, very, very important. I think on a basic level, if you look at the Steelers and the Steelers matchup, that was a really bad game for a lot of the kind of things they were meant to be good at, right? Like, it brings into question a whole host of things. Suddenly, I'm thinking it's almost a certainty that Clint Hurtt's going to be fired as defensive coordinator. You hear him in his press conference this week. He looks less. He just looks like a guy who's a dead man walking. It was almost sad watching him out there. I felt bad for him in a way, but that's comes with the territory, comes with the job. It's what he signed up for. It's what he gets paid the big bucks for. I don't know the average salary of an NFL defense coordinator, but I'm sure it's okay. Vince, I answered that question about we kind of answered that question with Geno Smith in the tape episodes, but sorry, I'll get into that maybe at the end. Anyway, this Cardinals matchup is an opportunity for Seattle to put a lot of the Steelers things right, which we're going to get into. On a kind of overall level, the Seahawks are 1-4 in the NFC West, given they've only beat the Cardinals and they let the Rams and the 49ers do the double against them. And the Cardinals are kind of similar in a way. So the Seahawks have to the Seahawks in that the Seahawks have trailed NFL football games for 7 hours, 19 minutes, and 21 seconds, which is somehow only the fifth worst in the league. But the Cardinals are even worse than that. They're one of those 4 other teams that are worse in terms of trailing. Unreal. Just absolutely unreal. Now, in terms of like a more advanced way of looking at this, and I've been using via Sports Info Solutions, their total points metric. And in overall total points, the Seahawks currently are at 13th in the NFL. There they are. The Cardinals are 27th. So they're pretty much worse off. Now, there's been a few changing factors, particularly offensively, in that Kyler Murray returned to the lineup in week 10. We'll see how good he's been. And also James Conner is back. He didn't play against the Seahawks in this first matchup either. But why this is an opportunity really for the Seahawks is the Cardinals are fresh off beating the Philadelphia Eagles in a comeback win. And though Seattle's favored by 2.5 points in this road matchup, this is kind of a tough, it looks on, at least on paper, looking at the kind of statistics and everything, it looks like a really tough matchup for Seattle. Now, why does it look like a tough matchup for Seattle? Well, in total points, the Arizona Cardinals are the number 1 rushing offense in the entire NFL. Yikes. Meanwhile, as you can see here via Sports Info Solutions, the Seahawks run defense has fallen to, they're now the 31st run defense in the NFL. We'll talk about the Cardinals run defense in a second, but this is a really problematic Cardinals rushing offense for Seattle. I mentioned James Conner, the running back. He has a 13% broken tackle percentage, which is 3rd in the league. He has a 19% broken and missed tackle percentage, which is 4th among running backs. And he's averaging 3.3 yards after contact per attempt, which is 4th in the league. And by the way, his teammate, DeMarcado, is 3rd in the league. That's big time yikes, given the Seahawks missed 15 tackles in the run game last week. And although I think only 4 of the 10 explosive plays against the Steelers were explosive runs, they just couldn't stop the run for Toffee. In the second half, they clamped up a bit, but then, Pete Carroll was mentioning that they limited them to 2.6 yards per carry. Well, the Steelers actually did a fair bit of running by the goal line where you're not going to be averaging too much. And just the gap integrity, the pad level from the dudes down at the line of scrimmage, but just getting reach blocked badly. And then those tackling, it was just so poor. And we looked at it on the tape and we just couldn't understand how bad it was. So real kind of something to monitor there for Seattle coming into this game. To stop the run. Like if you get beaten a different way against this Cardinals team, okay. But if you just stop the run and get back to that basic and playing solid, sound, fundamental football, that would be nice, given that's what they came into the season wanting to do. Connor has 15 touchdowns in 13 games versus the NFC West opponents. And last week, he had 26 carries for 128 rushing yards, which is a 4.9 yards per carry average. He also had a rushing touchdown versus the Eagles. And in the last 4 games, he has 439 rushing yards. He is also on the season averaging 4.91 yards per carry on 181 total carries of the football. So Connor's really causing teams issues. It's a big time matchup for them to have to play against. And in terms of the injury report, the kind of troubling news is that Jaron Reed is cropping up as questionable with a knee injury. Non-participant on Wednesday, non-participant on Thursday, non-participant on Friday. If Jaron Reed can't play in this game, the Seahawks are in absolute nightmare territory. I mean, the nose tackle, and we were unsure about the signing coming into the season, given that, he'd looked shaky in Green Bay, but he's been absolutely revitalized by the Seahawks letting him play aggressive, downhill, power stepping, one gapping, outside shoulder to center, kind of nose tackle, classic one technique in Seattle's over fronts. And he has been a revelation, hasn't he? He has 7 sacks on the year, but he's also been a really solid run defender who, it's very clear, gets the kind of finer details of defensive tackle plays, brought all that veteran savvy to the position. And if Reed can't play, Mario Edwards would have presumably been the kind of next man up as the nose tackle / 3 tech, along with Leonard Williams able to spot in there. But Mario Edwards out with a knee injury. He also missed last week. This is now a problem, because what happens next is the next guy up would be Miles Adams, who's more been treated like a big end. And honestly, he's been getting moved a bit in the run game, but I think that's partly because his best work comes as a 3 tech. And so then you're looking at rookie 4th round pick Cam Young. And Cam Young, I mean, he's trying out there, but he's just not ready. He's too high. He kind of gets moved. It's a real struggle for him out there. So things aren't looking great for the run defense, I have to say. Monjombo, didn't you say last year that the few times they put Miles Adams at nose tackle, he was awful? Was that the same one tech position? Monjombo, probably not the same one tech position. Like this kind of way of playing downhill will suit him better, rather than asking him to kind of mirror step and then lag to the backside gap. But I think generally you're more likely to be comboed at the one tech, and I just don't think that's Adams' type of game. It's kind of weird how they've used him, to be honest. So the right down the middle of the run defense, it looks like an absolute mess. And I've just told you how talented the Cardinals are running the football. Kyler Murray himself, by the way, in total points per 60 snaps, well, let's not actually talk about that first. Let's talk about how Kyler Murray's averaging about 40 rushing yards a game since he came back in week 10. So I wanted to come into this being enthusiastic, but this looks like a really scary game. But on the flip side, right? On the flip side, this is the opportunity for Seattle to go, you know what, the Steelers game, that is bad. We've been terrible in run defense for quite a while now. The first 8 weeks of the season, we started great. The first 5 weeks of the season in particular. This is the last game of the season, playoffs or not. Let's actually prove we can stop the run. Let's get our stuff together and let's perform. Now, the other challenging thing about the Cardinals is their usage of personnel. So on the season, right, you can see they use the number one amount. This is, again, Sports Info Solutions, the SIS Data Hub. Excellent stuff. They use the most 13 personnel in the league. 11% of their snaps coming in 13 personnel. Now, 12 personnel, this has them using 21% of. So that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So these are the multiple tight end looks. 1 running back, 3 tight ends for 13 personnel. But where things get interesting is if you look at weeks 1 to 9, so before Kyler Murray was in the lineup. Please load. There we go. They were only using 18% of 12 personnel, which only placed 20th in the league, and their 11 personnel usage was up. However, from weeks 10, and I don't know how much this is Kyler Murray, and you want to kind of use him as a threat in the running game. But in weeks 10 to 18, their 12 personnel usage has been 24%, the eighth highest in the league. So it's jumped, what was it, 8? I should have noted that down. Yeah, so it's jumped 6 percentage points, their usage of 12 personnel. So they're kind of bumped that up, reduced the 11. And just from a kind of Kyler Murray perspective, it's going to be really interesting seeing him in this type of offense, because I know it's been said a lot, but the Cliff Kingsbury stuff towards the end, I mean, it always was a bit funky, but towards the end, it wasn't really an NFL offense. It was odd. This is kind of a more obviously structured deal, and it seems to have a few more layers to it. But how good has Murray actually been on his return? Well, again, let's go to total points to study that. That's not going to show me it. And I was surprised that he's been fairly poor. So if you look at his total points per 60 snaps, we don't want his total points rank in general, do we? Because he's only played from week 10 onwards. But his total points per 60 snaps, Murray has 4 total points per 60 snaps. That only places 25th in the league. By comparison, Geno Smith has 6 total points per 60 snaps, which comes in at 10th. So Murray, not quite as good as you might think. And he has 5 picks on the year. He's kind of still like that boom or bust type of player. He's also not helped out by the fact that the Cardinals' offensive line has been causing some serious kind of issues for him. He's playing behind Paris Johnson Jr. and Kelvin Beachum. Johnson playing on the right, Beachum on the left. They've allowed a combined 10 sacks to go along with 12 penalties on the year. And Johnson in particular has been an issue. He's allowed 8 of the sacks. I don't know if that's also because he plays on like the front side of Kyler, and so that's kind of getting charted. I believe this Pro Football Focus's numbers. Maybe it's getting charted as technically on him, but Murray's kind of thinking he make the guy front side miss. But that's the 8th highest number among qualified tackles. The 8 sacks Johnson's allowed. So maybe this is an opportunity for Boye Mafe to hit double-digit sacks. Mafe needs 1 sack to hit the 10-sack mark. That would be the first time a Seahawks hit double-digit sacks since Frank Clark and also Jaron Reed did it back in 2018. It's kind of nuts Seattle hasn't had a pass rusher make that happen since that point. Now, what would help Murray? And let me just find the... Yeah, so in total points, again, just one metric, but the Cardinals apparently are 16th in blocking. I could look up their pressure percentage, but I think Murray heavily influences their pressure percentage, so I'm not going to. But also, the reason that the Cardinals' multiple tight end usage is so high is that Trey McBride, the tight end in his second year of NFL football, has 791 receiving yards on 78 catches, and he's only played 16 of the 17 games. And both his receiving yards and his catches placed top 7 among tight ends. Which also interesting with McBride is they try and get him the ball kind of short in the kind of short to intermediate range, but also throwing him the ball on some screens and stuff, which is kind of evidenced by his average depth of target being 5.8 yards. But McBride also averages 5.2 yards after the catch and has broken 10 tackles this season. So again, with the Seahawks tackling issues, McBride, who, I mean, he's kind of a fake tight end. And again, 12 personnel, like, is it 11? Is it 12? If he's kind of a fake tight end, there you go. But McBride is still a bigger wide receiving threat than, he's 246 pounds. I don't think he's that great a blocker, but he's kind of your move type of dude who's a genuine kind of rack problem. And Julian Love said this week that he's someone he thought you'd hear more about uh, as his career develops, and after this season that he's had. So it's a tough matchup for the Seahawks, and particularly in the Cardinals' strengths kind of are where Seattle is looking a bit shaky, or has been shaky at least. The offensive line, it may be something you can attack and exploit, but you could also say that Kyler Murray's so mobile and elusive, and while Seattle's got a bit better about how they play him over recent years, can Seattle come together with a coherent game plan to be able to stop the run, but also, keep Murray somewhat contained? In the past, they've done really well kind of using flush games to cut the field in half and get him moving into nowhere and kind of to sides where and angles he launch points where he doesn't like throwing the football off. But I worry about how the run game and the kind of heavier formations and the kind of staying balanced from the Cardinals is going to look for Seattle this week. It just looks like a tough matchup, unfortunately. Now, this could be any questions on that, chat? Please do keep engaging. Let me just catch up with that. Henry saying, is week 18 the first week of free agency? Well, kind of, right? It's definitely meaningful in terms of there'll be Seahawks players who are wanting to, get incentives in this game. There'll be all kinds of ramifications from this, and I think it's a big week because if Seattle comes out and plays flat again, and I've obviously supported Pete Carroll, but if Seattle comes out and plays flat or there's signs of quit, and I should say against Pittsburgh, there wasn't signs of quit. They were playing hard. They were just playing very bad on defense. But if there's signs of quit in this game or they just get out, like they just get dominated, that's an unforgivable thing to happen. And that would make me concerned about the future of Pete Carroll. I don't believe they're going to come out flat. It would shock me that a Pete Carroll team would do that, even with all that's gone on this season and the kind of disappointment, etc., etc. Now, the other big news defensively, and something which will help the run defense, but also will help the pass coverage and just the team speed at the second level. Jordan Brooks is listed as questionable with that kind of medial ankle injury he's been dealing with, the ankle sprain, but Pete Carroll in his press conference today said he'll play. That is pretty massive. We've seen from the Steelers game how, Devin Bush fired up to play his old team, but he had a nightmare game. He just did not play well at all. Brooks returning to the weak side backer spot is just big. I mean, don't forget, after they lost in the 49ers wildcard round last season in the playoffs, Pete Carroll said how Jordan Brooks was one of the game changers on the defense. He highlighted him and he highlighted Quandre Diggs. And he said that Reek Woolen could become that. Bit of a disappointment what's happened with Reek Woolen since, isn't it? It's maybe a subject for another day. So, chat, if you don't have any questions about the Seahawks defense matching up with the Cardinals offense, let's transition to the Cardinals defense. And this is where Seattle may be able to find some success. Injury report wise, Evan Brown is a full participant on Thursday and Friday and listed without a game status designation. So he's passed the concussion protocol. Obviously, he ended up missing, ended up having to sit out the rest of the Steelers game after getting banged right in the head. Oluwatimi came in, did a pretty okay job, actually. Made me interested about what he can bring to the team moving forward. But Brown back in the lineup for maybe his final game. He's on a 1-year deal. Would you bring him back? It's certainly going to be an interesting thing to see play out. And The big news in terms of this team right now is on the offensive line, though. Still, so Anthony Bradford, full participant with the knee shoulder thing. Great. Didn't miss a single practice. He's not on the final injury report. But there's a situation developing at right tackle. So Abraham Lucas, who had to leave that Steelers game early with like a recurrence of the knee pain, like he's just unable to put power on it. You could visibly see it on tape. He just can't anchor on the right knee. Really troubling, just not for this end of season, but his career. He said he's going to, as you know, the first time he came back, he said he was going to get it taken care of or something along those lines in the off season. Well, it's going to have to be quite a procedure, I think, and hopefully it goes well for him. But he's going to miss this game. He's out. So that right tackle's out. So what you would do is lean on 40-year-old NFL vet Jason Peters to play right tackle. But Jason Peters, who missed last week, I believe. Let me just double check that. I think Jason Peters missed last week. Yes, he missed last week with a foot injury. And this week, he's pushing really hard to make it. But he's currently questionable and didn't participate in any of the practices with a foot injury. Why is this important? Well, that means Seattle's down to their third string right tackle, and Seattle's third string right tackle is Jake Curhan, who coming into the year was the second string right tackle and a guy who, when he'd been given his opportunities, had done fairly well. However, he kind of managed to lose that second string opportunity. They signed Jason Peters because of how kind of yikes they felt about Jake Curhan. They actually cut Curhan and ended up, he ended making his way back onto the practice squad with how the NFL season shakes out, and he's now on the active roster. But he's not very good in pass protection, and I imagine Geno Smith's going to have to rely on some similar stuff to what we saw in the previous game versus the Steelers, where he's escaping guys, making dudes miss, doing his best to stay alive, but it's kind of troubling out there, and you're worried about him. And then eventually what you end up happening is, a forced fumble, and, they couldn't get lucky for another time. So that's not great. That's really not great. I don't really know what to say about that. The other factor is that Dennis Gardeck, the Arizona Cardinals outside backer, he has 6 sacks on the year, and BJ Ojulari 4 sacks, and so bringing some kind of juice for a rookie. It's going to be interesting, and it could be that this is another game where I'm kind of saying about how, I've completely forgot about Stone Forsyth. this is the joy of doing it live. I've blanked on Stone Forsyth. Well, Stone Forsyth is definitely a better pass protector than Jake Curhan. He did okay against Watt. He did okay, but it's still a really big loss not having Lucas out there. Sorry, chat. I don't know why I forgot about Curhan. How embarrassing. That kind of speaks to how I view Forsyth, though. Yeah, so Curhan will be the right guard, and so the other news when it comes to the offensive line is Phil Haynes is a non-participant on Thursday, didn't practice on Friday, and is ruled out, which is a shame for him because he was pushing to come back. Obviously, he's would have been like pushing to play left guard. He was the projected left guard heading into the year. Kind of a sad story for Haynes in that his career has been so impacted by injury. The 4th round pick in 2019, he he was signed to that 1-year deal, a $4 million deal, and it just hasn't worked out, hasn't it? Has it? This was like his prove it opportunity. I wonder if he comes back to Seattle on like a vet minimum kind of thing and tries to stay healthy and compete. There's offensive line depth always needed around the league, and someone who's played like NFL games is always going to be, he's always going to have value, but that's a tough one for him. Ronald, I believe O'Neal is on the practice squad. Raycon O'Neal. Jack, I think Forsyth did okay against what? I I I think Jack Gino did a very good job. Is how I'd say that. So the offense though should be able to do some things this game. If they don't do some things, I'll be very disappointed. Really. Um, Now, why do I say that? Well, again, if you look at total points, um, while offensively the Cardinals are 24th, we can't really read too much into that because Kyler returned week 10, but it's still relevant. Defensively, the Cardinals are 29th in total points, and they're just bad. They're just really, really bad. They don't have much talent. Their run D is 32nd in the NFL, and their pass coverage in total points is 10th, but their pass rush in total points 32nd. So maybe the offensive line will be doing all right. I know Gardet gets some buzz. But the pass coverage being 10th in total points is somewhat surprising, and it kind of speaks to, is it pass rush or pass coverage, that old adage, given that, Cardinals defensively, they've given up over 400 yards of offense in 4 of their last 6 games. They've also allowed the 6th most yards per reception and the highest receptions resulting in first downs at 39.8% in the league. Buda Baker gets a lot of noise, doesn't he? He's a fun player, a flashy player, someone Pete Carroll highlighted. I always thought he was the type of player that the Seahawks... Oh, how have I done that? How have I removed my audio? Oh, that's how. My camera. What? No. Is that how I was? Okay, never mind. Where was I? Yeah, Baker's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a really fun matchup. I mean, Seattle's offense should be used to how to handle nickel blitzes and a guy buzzing around the line of scrimmage and causing havoc. But we'll have to see on that one. I mean, if you look at the Cardinals secondary just on paper, and it's not the biggest problem. It doesn't look bad. And this is a game like Gino's kind of due like a really good outdoor, all 4 quarters, just blowout kind of win. Uh, are we calling the Cardinals Stadium a dome? I don't know. Um, Probably not, right? Antonio Hamilton and Starling Thomas. I know Starling Thomas is someone DK Metcalf highlighted for praise, but yeah, I don't profess to know too much about these guys. Now, defensively, I've seen we have a question on their defense. Should we find out what they do defensively? Well, they're kind of a Fangio derivative system, aren't they? With Jonathan Gannon as their head coach. So again, the Seahawks should be familiar with how. Oh, let's get the filters right. The Seahawks should be familiar with how they run their defense. And to Shane Waldron's credit, I mean, like against the Eagles, he was very good at getting into multiple tight end sets, forcing base defense, understanding the structure of the defense, and getting easy completions for Gino to stay ahead of the chains, stay efficient, easy, kind of almost free yardage. So hopefully Seattle's able to do that. Interesting, the Cardinals are here listed as using a 1 high shell quite a bit. Vince, I think where the Cardinals will cause issues is just odd front structure forces man-on-man protection, and then you can use your twists and all that sort of stuff that the Seahawks have had issues with this season. You can see that their blitz rate when they get pass is only 30th in the league, 16% of snaps with blitzes. So they don't blitz often. They use a 4-man rush on 70% of their plays. So, I mean, that's quite remarkable, isn't it? Vince, let me know if you want to see any more of this kind of broke down. But yeah, I don't see this as for the Seahawks as being like a massive. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, again, so they're nickel 3-3-5. That's probably penny. So that's nickel bear. So again, odd front forcing man stuff, maybe causing the Seahawks offensive line some issues. I'm still annoyed I blanked on Stone Forsyth. Apologies to Stone. And that's interesting. They're two. So they're presenting. So I think this means what? How does that make sense? Oh yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. So no, it doesn't. So this says they run a too high share on 37% of snaps, but they have middle of the field open coverage on 53% of their snaps. So they're probably presenting one high. This is weeks 10 to 18, and then spinning into two high as a disguise. So I guess that's slightly interesting. I don't know how much to read into that. That seems a bit funky. Now, let me check. I've covered everything here. Yeah, so that's the kind of pass D explored. Their run defense, like a lot of the Fangio systems, interesting. 32nd in total points per SIS. And you don't even need to look at like fancy numbers. They're averaging 143 rushing yards allowed per game, which is the most in the league. They cannot stop the run. Interestingly, also, Kenneth Walker rushed for 105 rushing yards the first time these two sides met, which was his only 100 yards rushing game of the season. So this, again, for Seattle, Pete Carroll's bemoaning that they can't run the football or they don't run it enough. Do it. Do it in this game. Prove to people that you can run the damn ball up a defense's throat, cause them issues, etc., etc. This is the chance for Seattle to get it done. And yeah, if you've got any questions in the chat or anything you want to know, please ask away. I should have gone on rbsdm.com as well. Let's see how that shakes out if we can. Sometimes this site is weird with me. Like I can't. Oh, here we go. Oh dear. This makes me so sad. Why? How? It was also good. So the Cardinals in EPA rush EPA per play are 26th defensively, and their rush success rate defending the run is even worse than Seattle, so 43.1% compared to Seattle at 42.9%. Drop back success rate, the Cardinals are the worst team in the league in drop back success rate, 51.3%, implying they give up easy completion structurally, I would suggest. Let's have Shane Waldron exploit that, please. And then drop back EPA per play, the Cardinals are also the worst defense in the league, 32nd. So come on, let's have a big Geno, absolute brilliant blowout. 8 touchdowns, 500 passing yards. No, actually, no. Let's be 600 passing yards. I'm being reasonable. Let's have something like that happen. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Now, let's have a look at the Cardinals EPA per play since week 10 when Kyler Murray returned on offense. Jack, I want to know why it is the Hawks were effective stopping the run in the red zone against Pittsburgh, but not between the 20s. Jack, less space. Probably some stouter play calls, better execution, random variance, easier to tackle inside the 20. You can get more players to the ball quicker. I haven't dived into it much, but there's also probably just some random variants where, like, they ran inside the red zone in the second half when Seattle stopped undoing themselves, Ronald, run blitz rates are really hard to get because on a run play, say I'm in a defensive structure, right? On a run play, I might have it look like 6 guys are blitzing, or yeah, it might look like 6 guys are blitzing because we've got 6 guys down on the line of scrimmage and they all rush, but that's not necessarily a 6-man blitz because when you pass, well, I might want to drop both edge rushers off the edge and just rush 4 guys, like is typical, right? So to get specific run blitz rates without being in the building, there's always going to be some slight errors. So Ronald, I don't know if actual companies chart that really, because if they do it, it'll be wrong. So sorry about that. Okay, so the Cardinals in EPA per play since week 10 on offense are 13th. And the success rate on offense is 12th, just 1.1 spot behind Seattle. Now, their drop back EPA per play and Kyler Murray's ability to rush the football does boost this, but they're 22nd. Yikes. And their drop back success rate, they are 23rd. So they're still bad with Murray there. That's kind of what I wanted to check out. Their rush EPA per play, though, is nuts. Second in the league, just behind the 49ers. And their rushing success rate, 6th. So a bit more of a volume thing, perhaps. There you go. Yeah, no worries, Ronald. Right. So, offensive injuries we've covered. Kenneth Walker, maybe he'll be able to practice. Maybe he'll be able to play. Maybe he won't. He was a non-participant Wednesday, limited participant Thursday with his shoulder thing. The way Pete Carroll's speaking, it sounds like he will play. Unfortunate news for those of you who wanted to see Kenny McIntosh. He managed to bash his thumb, jar his thumb in a freak accident, kind of a freak landing type of play in practice. Sounds like, and he's ruled out for the game, even though he wasn't really getting action on offense anyway, was he? So you won't see the rookie 7th round pick, but you probably will see Walker, and it's big given how the Cardinals struggled to stop the rushing attacks. Now, the final thing I want to talk about, well, there's final 2 things I want to talk about. We obviously know what needs to happen for the Seahawks to make the playoffs. They need to beat the Cardinals and they need the Packers to lose at home to the Bears. Well, let's say, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, but the Cardinals have a rooting interest in this game too, not just stuffing it to the NFC West rival, but the Cardinals right now, okay, if you look at remember, they were expected to be a really bad team this season, and Jonathan Gannon is interesting. Like, is he real? Because he was mocked a lot, wasn't he? I may have tweeted something mean about him. Oops. But the Cardinals have, they've had some big wins. They've beat the Eagles, the Cowboys, and someone else good. But why this all matters is if you look at the current NFL 2024 draft projections, the Cardinals are 4th in the league. They're 4-12. Now, ahead of them are the Bears, who are 2-14. Even if the Bears, but they're 2-14 via Carolina, right? So that's not going to change. The Panthers are trash. Then it's the Commanders, who are 4-12, 2nd overall, and then the Patriots, who are 4-12, 3rd overall. But the Cardinals, because their wins have been so good, are like a really good 4-12. They could, in theory, the Patriots, they look dunzo, obviously in terms of winning, but you never know. There's always something weird which happens in week 18, isn't there? Um, the point is the Patriots could win, sorry, and the Cardinals could win. And the Cardinals could lose, and the Commanders could win. So the Cardinals could go as high as second overall, though it feels unlikely. But worse for the Cardinals if they're kind of thinking draft position, if the Cardinals win and the Giants, Chargers, and Titans lose, who are the teams who are currently picking below the Cardinals could drop down to seventh overall in the draft, in the 2024 draft, which for a 5 and 12 team would be so bad. I I know they're not tanking, and they haven't shown any signs of tanking this year, despite what it may have looked like from a roster perspective. But going from, you could have been potentially second overall, you're now fourth overall, going to seventh overall. That there may be something weird which happens. You just don't know. So that's the kind of final thing I'd say to monitor. There is draft ramifications on this game, especially for the Cardinals. So yeah, hopefully we are live on Sunday with another for the second year in a row, another kind of miracle win where the other team handles business as well. What was weird about that Detroit game was the Detroit Packers game Sunday Night Football, and the Seahawks game was at 9 p.m., wasn't it? So we got to go live, didn't we? Like after Sunday Night Football and celebrate. Is that correct? I think it is. Whereas this time, both games are at 9:25 p.m. As I said at the start, the Seahawks have said they won't be scoreboard watching, but I mean, it's going to be hard not to, especially because in every NFL stadium, they have the scoreboards all over the stadium, all on the Jumbotron and the highlights. So, yes, and that was the other cool thing, Monjumbo, as you point out, the fact that the Seahawks won, knocking the Lions out, and the Lions still took care of business for Seattle. Now, as I said, this is a big game. Run the ball better or more on offense, and actually be true to your word against a terrible rushing defense. Make it happen. Get Charbonnet involved as well, not just Walker. Let Gino go off and prove that he's the future of the franchise, not just this year, but you might even think about extending him to get cap flexibility. And then defense, prove you can stop the run. If Trey McBride is the dude, then he's the dude. I didn't even properly talk about the fact that while it's a bad matchup for Seattle in terms of their rushing offense versus Seattle's rushing defense, I mean, receiver-wise, they've said how Kyler Murray's their guy. Well, if he's their guy, they need to give him better receivers than Michael Wilson, who, to be fair to him, he's a rookie. I think he was a day 3 pick. No, round 3 pick, Michael Wilson. He impressed me at the Senior Bowl, but on a good team, he'd be like wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 at best. He would not be the relied upon to be the dude. I should have also mentioned also that I mean, what is Hollywood Brown doing? He's just like a gadget player, isn't he? Kind of just like get it to him in space type. Yeah. And yeah, there's Dortch, isn't there? But receiver wise, there's not much to be concerned about. You'd think. He got put on IR. That makes a ton of sense because I didn't see his name as a thing. And he's been banged up. Durability's been a thing for him, hasn't it? Right. That's all I've got. If you've got any questions about the Seahawks, now is your time to ask them. Vince, other Fangio defense teams had complaints about complexity and number of checks. Our guys weren't communicating after motions, though. Is the Fangio scheme that much more complex than others? No, Vince, I don't think it's that more complex than others. I think it's more sometimes the coverages don't really seem matched up well to the fronts. And I think that the more you divorce those two things, the more problems you can encounter. Yeah, I hope that made some sense. Yeah, and schedule wise, what's going to happen is we'll go live Sunday just to keep you guys in the loop. We'll go live Sunday after the game. Hopefully happy, but if not, then not. Then obviously they'll come defense scheme review, offense scheme review, defense data review, offense data review. Maybe a really early look ahead to the draft, and then it will soon be the Senior Bowl. There'll also be stuff we can learn from playoff games and stuff. Do I agree with Pete's comments about the running backs in his segment on Brock and Salk this week? It was uncharacteristically critical, especially compared to his handling of Adams. What, Jordan? What part did you find critical? I think he was being quite open about how he wants them just to get downhill, right? He kind of almost went describing Ken as almost like a gadget finesse player. I think he's just really frustrated, but yeah, he could. I get what you're saying, Jordan, about the physicality. Yeah, it was a bit odd. I do somewhat agree with it. It's more to me that it'd be nice to see Walker just one cut and hit up the crease, but I don't know if he's ever going to be that type of dude. Ronald, any difference in EPA for cards Randy versus gap or zone? Let me try and find that. Ronald, I'll tweet about it, okay? I'll do a tweet. If I haven't done a tweet about it, remind me. Why is the offensive line so bad at blocking in obvious run situations and they're bad in obvious pass situations if the defense hasn't indicated they win most of the time? Well, partly because that's really hard when they kind of know what you're doing. Like you don't want them to know. Like it's very difficult for any offensive line. Right. Well, that's all I've got. Like I said, Sunday, and then I enjoy hanging out and doing these and interacting with you guys in the chat, and I really appreciate you tuning in live each time. So even if they don't get it done, let's do some stuff. And with the video breakdowns, I haven't known what to do them on because I've tried to keep them player focused and positive. Like, would you be interested in a video breakdown which shows like 3 plays of just why something's happened or what makes something bad? Basically, our tape review, but structured, like snappy, concise, not too edited, but a bit edited, and then like 10 minutes of your day. Like, is that a fun thing? I guess I should just try it. Like, why the Seahawks can't defend the run anymore. Majombo, well, that special teams ranked consistently high even when the rest of the team breaks down. Yeah, well, that's interesting I need to look at the missed tackles on special teams. That's a good a very good point. Because it doesn't feel like you get too many missed tackles on specials, but really it's because those guys get to really just focus on their specials and they're clearly been coached well. And they've really prioritized them. Not that teams around the league don't, but they really do prioritize them as a pathway to playing. And they keep them really competitive. And I think you have to, praise the third side of the ball, still an important side. But Larry Izzo's doing a good job, isn't he? Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Until Sunday, appreciate you tuning in. Please do share it with people. Like the video, comment down below. Donate if you want to donate. No pressure. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 5-star review of the podcast. Follow me at Matty F Brown. Follow the pod at Seattle Overload. Until next time.